put up the signs. What the hell did we think was gonna happen? We brought him here. We were trying to do something good. We were being human beings. What are we now, Gareth?
Hey, Walking Dead fans, welcome back to the channel. This is James in Nashville. Spoiler alert for all things Walking Dead. If you remember back during Terminus, the backstory of Terminus, Gareth, his mother, and some others, they started Terminus with very good intentions to actually help people. It was a sanctuary, but bad people came along and locked them in train cars, raped the women, raped Gareth's mother, Mary, and bad things, very bad things. So Gareth said, we're going to take this place back. And when they did, they became cannibals. They were going to get the upper hand on everybody that came in before anything could happen. And if you remember the guy that ran out of the container with the tattoos on his face when Rick and Glenn and Daryl and some others were trying to escape Terminus.
Ah! We're the same! We're the same!
He was the leader of that group that overtook Terminus and raped the women. They captured him and locked him in a container. And it seemed he went a little bit crazy as well. And he was saying when he came out of the container that you're just like me, you're just like me. And that means that he was talking about Gareth and Mary and the group that became cannibals. That's just as bad or worse than the rape thing. You know, both things are very bad. So the guy was just screaming, you're just like me. So I was going to read you a thing in this video, what it's about. I'm going to read you a thing that we can then discuss in the comments about apocalyptic world and stuff like that. And it mainly means how the world itself could be, things in it and stuff like that. But we've got the people too, Terminus, you know, going bad. Will you go crazy for the things that happen to you and all the death that's around you and stuff like that in such a type apocalypse? So this thing I was going to read you is like updated. It says updated 6 years ago. So that's before the current pandemic that we've had in the world and just went through. And a lot of people don't want to talk about it or think about it or, you know, discuss things like that. But I think we easily see that if something happened that was a notch or two above what did happen, things could get terribly bad for you and me. Now, personally, I don't think anything like that will happen. I think we can overcome it like we have this, like we have things in the past, and we will prevail. But while surfing the web, I come across a website called Quora, Quora.com. It's like a Q&A site with an interesting question. Aside from the existence of zombies, how realistic is The Walking Dead? If some sickness like that were to exist, would the world be as helpless as depicted? And like I say, this was updated, it says updated 6 years ago, so before the current pandemic. And it looks like this was answered by Steve Wilds, and I'll read you the answer. After a year or two, gasoline and diesel would be unusable, so no cars or generators. So what he says there, after a year or two, gasoline and diesel would be unusable, pretty much after 2 for sure. But it might get you where you're going if you don't care about messing up the car. Batteries would have lost their charge, so no torches, flashlights. And that means, you know, in the stores, if you are relying on breaking into stores, say, and getting some batteries to put into your flashlight, after a while, you know, they will lose out and you won't be able to get it. Medicines would have gone past their safe use date. Without any kind of manufacturing going on, this stuff is gone for good, whether it's used or not. So yeah, eventually everything will pretty much go away, except maybe honey. Honey lasts forever. But without maintenance and regular heat airing, buildings would become damp and leaky after a few years, especially timber framed ones. And I would say, yeah, for that, things would start molding inside houses and stuff. It says the same goes for plants and machinery. Lubricants dry out and parts seize. Some components can perish, and without specialized knowledge, complex machinery is useless anyway. Basic things that we take for granted like matches, rope, cord, and hygiene products, let alone ammunition, would be in ever-diminishing supply. It's easy to imagine a post-apocalypse world as a massive free-for-all with all the goods of an entire civilization available to you. But the fact is that once it stopped being manufactured, it's all in a state of unreplenishable decay. And I think we've seen that in the show somewhat, and we might have went through it with toilet paper there for a little while, but you know, we've not reached that level yet where we're scavenging around through society to live day by day, right? Thank God. Nights are dark, winters are cold, shoes wear out, and clothes need to be repaired. Life would become a day-by-day affair, with no time for long-term plans, at least not until food supplies and the basics are established. Scavenging for canned food and dried food would take up a lot of time, especially without vehicles, while farming without fertilizers, pesticides, and herbicides, or specialized knowledge for that matter, becomes marginal and seasonal. Adapting to fire-cooked game would cause problems for a lot of people who have lived their entire lives eating clean, processed food. Without having built up immunities and tolerances, food poisoning would be commonplace, and even relatively mild cases of just bellyache and diarrhea could have a dangerous knock-on effects. Minor injuries that we don't even consider today could become life-threatening, either through infection or simply by reducing your ability to move and survive. Not only would zombies be a threat, but so would packs of feral dogs, and depending on where you are, other predatory wildlife that's no longer controlled through hunting. I think it's all too easy to forget the implications of not being at the top of the food chain anymore. Then there's the mental trauma of having lived through the zombie apocalypse and lost friends, family, and loved ones in the most horrific ways imaginable. The decisions you had to make will wear heavily on you. Many trained soldiers come home from war zones with serious cases of PTSD. Imagine how civilians would cope having lived through something infinitely worse and endless. Nobody would get over it, air quotes, and return to normal. They'd adapt to the new normality with all the savagery and hopelessness that it entails. It doesn't matter who you are, none of us can possibly know how we would cope with the unrelenting horror and marginal life in a zombie-infested post-apocalyptic world. The Walking Dead focuses on the human strain of living in that world, but I think it's a fairly tame depiction of what it would be like. People would adapt and survive for sure, but it would be a very different kind of life than we imagine in the comfort of our centrally heated, air-conditioned houses with a never-emptying supermarket down the road and the internet to tell us whatever we need to know. So, in the zombie apocalypse, there's probably not going to be an app for that, is what he's saying. I'll continue. For me, that's always been a part of the zombie genre's appeal. How bad would things get? How oversupplied and fat have we become? What would the effect of so much death and ever-present illogical horror be on the ragged, starving remnants of society? Could I survive all of that? Could we survive it? And I think that's a huge part of the appeal for everyone else too. There's something instinctively attractive about being thrown back into nature with wolves in the tree line and every day being a life or death struggle. It's what we evolved for after all, and I wonder if on some deep unconscious level, a part of us resents that it was born into the captivity of modern civilization. He closes with saying, "You can probably tell I've thought about this a lot ever since I was 13, in fact." So I don't know who that was that answered it. He may be a subscriber. He may go, "Dude, you just read my thing, my answer. That's cool." So, like I say, don't know who it was, just came across it in a web search. I thought it was written pretty well, and it does point out a lot of good points. So that was a really cool answer he put, and let's talk about it down in the comments. And I totally think shows like The Walking Dead really tell us one major thing. No matter what disease, virus, horror, monster, evil, group, ideology, whatever, throw it at us, in any which way, human nature's always going to be there, always going to be there. You can't snuff out human nature without snuffing out the humans. So as long as there's humans around, there's going to be human nature, meaning if you just have 5 people in a group, it's very likely one of them is bad or going to do bad, could have bad intentions along the way. But if you do want to discuss the contents of this video down in the comments, I will join you there. This is James in Nashville. As always, thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more dead stuff.